Hey, welcome to the historic 10th episode of Hardy Wrestling with Stephanie Hardy. What up? I'm so excited. If this is your first time listening, thank you for listening and welcome. But if this isn't your first time listening, welcome back. This has been a really crazy week in terms of wrestling and in terms of the world sort of affecting wrestling and all of the above. But the best thing that we can all do is to ride this roller coaster as much as we can and try not to get thrown off of it. So in this show, I'm going to talk about the news and gossip-ish that's unfolded this week. And then for a special wrestling fan story time, I'm going to have my very first interview with a fellow wrestling fan by the name of Ramsey Williams. I'm so excited about that. And then I'm going to have a special main event segment where I will be paying tribute to the superstars, men and women who got let go from WWE this week due to the effects of the COVID-19 crisis. And I'll also be paying tribute to Howard Finkel, who is regarded as the greatest wrestling ring announcer of all time, who sadly passed away this week as well. So sit back, relax, and listen to the 10th episode of Hardy Wrestling with your girl, Stephanie Hardy. Woo! Hey, so now we're in the news and gossip-ish segment of our podcast, and a lot has happened this week, so we're just gonna ride this ride and try to get through it as best as we possibly can. Now, Alexa Bliss responded to Ronda Rousey's fake comments. Now, y'all remember last week when I told y'all what Ronda Rousey said about how much she enjoyed participating in fake fights with the girls in WWE last year. So Alexa Bliss put out a statement based on a interview basically saying that she had a lot of respect for Ronda Rousey, but she also said that she doesn't like it when people use the F word because what we do is not fake. Ronda Rousey had accomplished a lot in MMA, and she came into our business and everyone was more than accommodating and wanted to see her succeed. It's kind of that thing where it's a two-person thing. Every match that we have, you're only as good as the person that you're in the ring with. The fact that she called it fake could be her opinion on it, but it's offensive to everyone that has had injuries, and myself included, because I've gone in the company 6 years without having a single injury, and then I ended up having a whole documentary based on multiple concussions that I wasn't even sure I was going to be cleared to ever be in the ring again. So kind of when someone does that, it's offensive. It's offensive to the girls that have worked their butts off, like you said. Now, quite frankly, I don't know if Ronda Rousey is doing this or saying all of this just to generate heat on herself. And when I say heat, that's in wrestling, that's defined as whenever you make somebody hate you or make somebody angry at you. So I don't know if she's doing this to make people mad at her or make the girls mad at her for the sake of storyline purposes, in which she could be staging a return because her contract is up next April. But either way, it's generating a lot of buzz towards the women's divisions, and I hope to a certain degree it is for a storyline. But then if it's not for storyline, if this is actually how she feels, because she did mention how she did feel some type of way about how the fans didn't appreciate her, I would hope that she's not just doing it to be mean and just being honest about her feelings. And I agree with Alexa Bliss because, quite frankly, I don't like it when people call wrestling fake either. Yeah, there's levels to it that is pre-planned out and levels to it that is choreographed, but they only do that for the safety of the wrestlers and for the safety of everyone involved. It's not like they just sit up there and just not hit each other, because some of those hits do connect to the point to where you can injure yourself either temporarily or in some cases permanently, because there have been wrestlers such as Edge and Daniel Bryan and Paige who are basically on the shelf for a number of years until they were able to come back. But then you have Paige, who's still on the shelf and can't necessarily wrestle as well as she, could, because she got injured and she had to retire. So wrestling is real. So don't ever let anyone tell you how supposedly fake it is. It is not fake, and it is not for the weak at heart. People have seriously may have either injured themselves to the point to where they can't walk anymore. There are some people who have head injuries, and it's led them to commit horrible crimes, as with the Chris Benoit situation with CTE. And it's just something that just shouldn't be taken lightly at all. So it's just not fake at all. So here's to Alexa Bliss saying what she said, and here's to Ronda Rousey and whatever it is she's trying to get across. Now we also have a story about AEW and their Double or Nothing pay-per-view. They announced this week that it will still air, but it won't be from Las Vegas with a crowd full of fans due to the crisis that's going on. Now, it will be televised on Saturday, May the 23rd, and the live event has been rescheduled to May 2021 to fans who already purchased tickets. Now, you have the option of getting a full refund for your tickets, or you can keep the original ticket and it will be valid for a replacement event that they will have in May 2021 due to the crisis. And I know it sucks whenever you buy a ticket and you get excited about a certain event and then it gets canceled, but hey, they're doing everything they can to keep people safe, so you can't really fault them for that. So Double or Nothing will be happening next year instead of this year. And then we have the news that WWE was deemed an essential business by Florida's governor's office amid the crisis. Now, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis allowed WWE to continue filming at its performance center in Orlando after determining it to be an essential business, quote unquote. Wrestling Inc. Reported on this and said that Orange County Mayor Jerry Demings had a review done, and they were not deemed essential at first, but now after further research and further investigating, the governor's office has now deemed WWE an essential business. Now, it's really weird because they're not essential in the same vein as restaurant workers and health workers such as nurses and doctors are, and we thank them for all they have done in the midst of all of this mess and all the above. And then it also feels weird because I'm an essential worker in the sense that I work in a cemetery now as a counselor. So they're not essential in that aspect, but I feel to a certain extent they could be deemed essential because of the fact that they're the only sports organization that's still active right now, because the NBA, the MLB, all of it has just been shut completely down, and WWE and AEW are the only people still putting on shows on television. And to a certain degree, I can understand how they could be essential because they're still offering entertainment for us, even in the midst of all of this mess. So it's just really weird. And then there's also a rumor mill going on Twitter that the reason why the Governor DeSantis did what he did was to try to curry favor politically. But we won't go into that on this show because this is not what this show is about. And politics and wrestling is just kind of gross. So we're just not going to go into that. Also in the news, we had Jerry Lawler, Hall of Famer and commentator on WWE Monday Night Raw, setting Twitter ablaze because he used an Asian food to describe a moonsault done by Akira Tozawa. During the Austin Theory Akira Tozawa match on this past Monday Night Raw, Jerry Lawler referred to Tozawa's senton as a ramen noodle moonsault, and it angered fans on Twitter because it is in absolutely poor taste to mention Asian food as a stereotypical means to address Asian people, and it's quite frankly racist as F. Now, there have been other moments in the past year and this year where Jerry Lawler has referred to so many Asian wrestlers by different stereotypes, and it has been absolutely ugly to witness. Like with the rise of the Kabuki Warriors tag team, like they were legit. Like it's been so many moments where I've mentioned on this show where he has said kind of off kilter things about them, either speaking Asian or showed himself covering his ears, or they've shown someone else covering their ears whenever they were speaking in Japanese loudly or whatever. And it's not cute at all because This is 2020, and there are people who live here besides European Americans, and besides African Americans, and besides, everyone else. There are Asian people here, and there are Asian people who do watch wrestling, and you can't sit here and make it seem like, oh, I'm just gonna make fun of them like you used to in the 1990s. In the 1990s, Jerry Lawler was saying all kinds of weird crap, especially about women, and even in the early 2000s, especially about women. And that stuff just doesn't fly anymore with the rise of social media and with the rise of being politically correct. And if you are employed by a publicly traded company, you should really watch what you say about all of these different people, because quite frankly, it just makes you and the company look like they'll just let anything slide. And it's just not okay for you to just keep saying stuff like that and to keep referring to Asian people along with Asian food. Like, that's horrible, because that almost makes it seem like the only thing you can attribute to Asian people is the food that they make. And quite frankly, I just feel like if you feel that way, then you just shouldn't be allowed to partake in anything that they contribute to society, period. And that's just how I feel about him. Now, also in the news, we had the passing of Howard Finkel, and I will address him more in the main event segment of this podcast. But quite frankly, he was regarded as one of the greatest ring announcers of all time. And it's very unfortunate that he passed away, but he had been dealing with previous health issues before he passed away at the age of 69, and they paid tribute to him on SmackDown this past Friday, and I will be paying tribute to him later on in the show. And then something else that will be addressed later on in the show are all of the releases that WWE took place in this week, along with the Revival having their releases requested. But then there's also the releases that happened due to the business strains that's happening because of the virus that's going on. So that's the end of this news segment, and now we're going to go on to Wrestling Fan Storytime with my special interview with Ramsey Williams.
All right, can you hear me now, Stephanie?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right, cool. I had to go get my microphone to see if they work too.
Okay. Well, welcome to my show.
Appreciate you having me once again. I hate that we had to go through all that trouble on the first episode like this.
Nah, it's okay. I mean, technology, it's man-made, so it's bound to fail. So basically what I'm going to do, I'm just going to ask you, questions about your wrestling fandom life, and then ask you about current events that's going on and everything. But first of all, I just want to know, how are you? How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm down here in Tuscaloosa. Like I seen you a couple months ago. Yeah, I was still doing the same thing I'm doing now, managing an apartment complex here, and just still watching wrestling and trying to figure out what is going on with. I don't know what's going on right now in wrestling. It's so chaotic.
Yeah. But I feel like that's kind of like life right now. All of it is just chaotic, and the chaoticness of life is just spilling over into wrestling. It's just whoa.
Yes.
So we're going to start off positive, though. I'm going to ask you, what age did you become a wrestling fan, and what drew you to it?
All right. So it's two instances that I really remember in my mind. So the first one, I was 4, so 1998. I was watching, I guess I was watching maybe cartoons or something. My brother came in and he turned to wrestling. And for some reason, it so happened to be the day that Mick Foley and Undertaker had their Hell in a Cell match at King of the Ring. Yeah, so I'm not sure if it was highlights of it or like the full match, but for some reason, I visibly remember seeing Foley being thrown off the cell. So that really got me into, wanting to get the action figures and, playing around with the toys and stuff like that. And as time grew, I started playing, some of the video games that my brother had, and really just seeing like, okay, this is a thing called wrestling. I remember whenever I was maybe 6 or 7, whenever Undertaker and Triple H, they were showing it on, I think they were doing the rewind for WrestleMania 17 when they were wrestling 01, and just watching that whole match and just seeing Undertaker fly down the ramp on his motorcycle, yeah, that started it. So I've been a fan since then.
Wow, that's funny because I kind of started at the age of 4 as well, except my match was Goldberg versus Hulk Hogan in WCW.
Oh wow, yeah, very.
Because my father was watching it at my grandma's house, and he used to tape WCW and WWE back to back.
Mm-hmm.
And now at the time, of course, I didn't know that there was a war going on between them both. But when I just came in and just sat down next to him and asked him, who's the bald guy? And he was like, that's Goldberg. And he was like, well, who's the other guy? And then he was just like, that's Hulk Hogan. I was like, oh. And I just sat there. I just sat there and just watched wrestling like that. And that's kind of what kept me, I guess, it was just a bonding time between me and my dad that just kind of, did it for me at first. But I also want to ask you, what keeps you interested in wrestling now as, an adult? Because a lot of people I know in my life have asked me, how is it that you watch this? Because, they feel like it's just a thing for children to watch or whatever. So what keeps you interested in it as an adult?
What's funny? It's funny that you brought that up because I know you've been seeing like me doing like the one gotta go post.
That's actually gonna be my next question. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there was a guy on there from my hometown. I'm not gonna say his name, but he's very, I don't want to say problematic, but he's very opinionated. And his first response wasn't a wrestler's name, nothing like that. Actually, no, it wasn't even in response to that. It was in response to the releases that happened. And he commented on there and said it's fake. And when he said that, it really set me aside because I was like, okay, people watch reality TV, people watch movies, people gossip about, stuff in sports and, all these things happening. But I mean, yeah, wrestling, it does have its winners and losers, already determined. However, you can't tell me that someone getting hit with a steel chair is fake. You can't tell me that, Mick Foley being thrown off of the cell, it may have been a crash pad or something, another there, or I don't even remember if it was even one there, but still, someone got to take those bumps, and those bumps are not fake. That's not anything fake, and really, besides them over just, oh no, it's a passion for me. Really, it's like seeing superheroes really telling a story and be able to tell it in a way that no one else in the world can tell their story with their bodies, with their mic skills, honestly, with just their passion of being able to go out in a crowd and make the room theirs.
Wow, that's very beautiful that you said that. Like, they're like superheroes and able to make the crowd theirs and everything, because it's so funny because in my news segment, I was talking about how Ronda Rousey had made her comments about calling the fighting that she was doing in WWE fake fighting, even though she was talking about how much she enjoyed, fighting with the girls last year and everything. She was calling it fake, and it sort of made all the girls kind of be like, what? Don't call it fake, because it's not. And I just don't see how is it that with all the information that's out there, about everything, how can they, and with all the people who have, come out and publicly said, I'm not wrestling anymore because of this injury. How is it that there's still this mindset that wrestling is fake? It just sort of bothers me because it's, you clearly see it isn't. But I guess people are just going to feel how they're going to feel. But, it's irritating.
It really is. It's to me, it's almost disturbing in a way, because it's like, you have these people that can enjoy something, but you downplay the people that watch something that's totally different from the norm. How many guys do you know that play Call of Duty, play NBA 2K, who play Grand Theft Auto, but then you see a wrestling fan or a nerd that watch, Dragon Ball Z or Naruto, and bash them for what they like? How can you tell someone what they like and what they don't like when you probably have some stuff that they don't like either, whether it's music, whether it's a religion, whether it's, your opinion on, love, whatever. You can't define someone else's passion, because at the end of the day, that's just allowing yourself to be criticized for your opinion on that passion.
Right. You are just as right as you can be. You're hitting the nail on all the heads.
Man, it's a lot of nails on some people's heads that I want to hit, because one thing I don't play about is wrestling. It's the greatest thing that I've ever known, honestly.
Me too. Okay, so you brought up the one guy to go post, and this is one of the main reasons why I wanted to interview you, was because during WrestleMania week, I loved how you kept sort of like the spirit going because of your one gotta go post on Facebook. So basically, what else basically inspired you to publicly post that on your Facebook page?
Well, as you know, like the way that we met was through, wrestling groups. So I always knew that I was always talking to people who are passionate about it, that join the group knowing that they are still active in wrestling, or, still have a thing for it. So I want to look into my friends group and be able to see, okay, I know the wrestling fans that I know love wrestling will comment, but let me see if I can go into this other avenue and see, okay, do they still have a passion? Do they remember this? Because a lot of them know, well, everyone knows I'm a wrestling fan. There's not nothing that I hide or anything. I always wear the stuff, and, I put it on my post, but a lot of them are so, I don't watch it no more because it's fake, but they will honestly, they'll sit there and they'll be like, man, I haven't watched since Stone Cold left, or when have I realized it's fake? So I was like, all right, let's test them. So I went to the ones that I knew, okay, it's going to be hard for you to decide out Stone Cold, Triple H, Undertaker, and Kane, because all those are, mainstream people that everyone knows. So I want to really shake some feathers and be able to see what I can get out of these people, and see, okay, will they comment anything negative, or will they just focus on the wrestling itself? And besides one bad egg, I mean, everyone else was really, positive about it.
Yeah, that was something that I did see. It was a lot of positive, a lot of positive reinforcement with it. Like, I definitely, I know I definitely enjoyed it because, I'm just a huge fan. But that's something that I have been struggling with myself in terms of posting stuff. Even though I go ahead and do it, I sort of struggle with posting stuff because I have so many different friends who like so many different things, and they may have watched wrestling at first, but then they quit, or it's also the fact that some of my Facebook friends are just mostly, women, and they never watched it.
Right.
And it's just kind of like, oh my God, like, who is gonna appreciate this? But then there have been a few, who have commented on it, and they, talk about what they do remember, or they'll see something that's happening now that caught their attention, and then they'll ask me about it or something like that. Like, I'll never forget when The Undertaker and Roman Reigns fought at WrestleMania a few years ago, and everybody thought The Undertaker was just retired and done. I saw people post about that who I didn't even know watched wrestling, like people who I went to college with, who I had no clue even knew who The Undertaker even was. But they were just like, oh my God, did he really retire? I can't believe this. He was wrestling when I was a kid, and da 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 da. And that was just, I feel like when you post stuff like that, you just never know who will actually, react to it. And they don't necessarily have to be, a diehard fan. They could be, a casual fan, or just somebody, who just, finds it fascinating, or they're just curious about it and may become a fan. So it's really cool. Right. Yeah, and I really loved, those one gotta go posts, especially during WrestleMania weekend, because I feel like that's the weekend of which, all the fans coalesce and come together and share their love for it. Now, I did want to ask you how you felt about, WrestleMania this year in the midst of all this mess. And were you happy with how the show turned out? And how did you feel about fans wanting it to be canceled, even though they couldn't be there and stuff? So how did you feel about it?
I was really torn. In the beginning, whenever I heard about the news, I was on the side of no, only because I'm like, well, it's WrestleMania. It's like, I mean, it's our Super Bowl, it's our World Series, it's our NBA Finals. So to be able to have it in front of a live crowd is, I mean, that's the dream. That's the dream of, all the people who are just now coming up from developmental or, coming from a different company and wanting to wrestle at WrestleMania. That's the dream goal, besides winning a world title, is to be on Mania. So
Right.
whenever I heard that they was going to be doing an empty arena show and it was going to be in a performance center, that's when my negativity came out, and I really voiced it. Okay, I can't get down with it because it's not going to feel the same. It's not going to be the same vibe. They're not going to have the big, amazing set, and just the crowd of people coming together as one. Like you said, the casual fans or the diehard fans coming together just to show love for this thing that we love called wrestling. So on that fence, I said no. However, I say yes leading in towards it because I started seeing the storyline still being, pushed forward, and the development of like the Firefly Funhouse match and the Boneyard match, and just seeing that they were still pushing in the promo work that they was doing in the empty arenas leading up to it, that drove me to say, okay, maybe WrestleMania, without all the hoopla and all the fans being there, and with them be able to record pre-date, I think that really, honestly, that made me think, okay, we could possibly have the greatest WrestleMania of all time on our hands. And to be honest, I don't want to say it's the greatest because, 17 and 19 comes to mind, but I would be lying if I said it wasn't top 3. It's for me, it's in the top 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's I'm yes and no with it. Now I'm more so yes, they achieved what they needed to do because you've been seeing my timeline. The Boneyard match and the Firefly Funhouse matches. Those are like 2 of my favorite matches of all time.
Yeah, now I will say I was disappointed when they said there weren't going to be any fans, allowed to be there. I was sad because a part of me wanted to try it and pot up and go to Florida, but then I understood, from a safety perspective, what was going on. Now, of course, before WrestleMania, they showed Raw and SmackDown and NXT without the audience there, and in my mind, I still knew like I was just gonna keep watching it because I can't just stop watching wrestling, just because, something crazy is going on. Like, there have been worse stuff in my life going on and I'll still watch wrestling. So, what? That I'm not going to stop just because of this. So, being able to watch it without an audience has almost opened up a different type of storytelling that I don't think I've ever been able to see on wrestling since, because I feel like with the fans there, of course we love to be there because we love having that interaction, of yelling at the person that we hate or cheering for the person that we love or whatever. But there comes a point where there's some parts of storytelling in terms of a facial expression or in terms of movement that's made or some words that's said that we can't hear sometimes because, there's so many people talking at a time and we can't hear it. And I feel like so much of that has actually been able to be, portrayed on television now to the point where it's almost making wrestling almost a bit like a tad bit better. And I don't know if you could say if it's a tad bit better, because how can it get better? But then again, that's how it gets better because you're able to see, the little nuances in the story. And I've been appreciative of it. And I just knew I was going to watch WrestleMania because it's my favorite pay-per-view of all time. Like, it's like out of all of the pay-per-views that they have, WrestleMania is my favorite. And I knew I was gonna go into it, head first and just love it regardless because that's just me. That's just me as a person. I just like to look at the positives, aside from everything else. So I enjoyed it, I enjoyed all of it, and I appreciated the fact that they were still putting so much energy, basically the same amount of energy that they would have put if there was an audience. They put the same energy into it without the audience, and that's what I appreciated the most about them, and the effort of it. And I love the Boneyard match, and I love the Firefly Funhouse match. I think I love the Firefly Funhouse match more
Yes.
because it kind of took you on a history trip.
Yes, and
and it kind of turned it on his head, and you're just like, whoa.
It was crazy. It to me, watching those two, I seen the Boneyard match, and I said, there is no way that John Cena and Bray Wyatt can top the two phenoms of wrestling, AJ Styles and Undertaker. They cannot do this injustice. But that Sunday night, and they showed their match, and I thought the Firefly Funhouse was just gonna be like, oh, they're just gonna be on the set and just wrestle around, Mercy Bird and all of those characters. But the depths that they went to, like you said, the history lesson that they took you on, for those who have been out of touch with wrestling for the last, almost 10 years, you being able to learn about, who John Cena character has become since you left wrestling, after the Ruthless Aggression era. Who is this Bray Wyatt character? How did he become the Fiend? And just the overall package of it. I promise. I have a lot of top 10 matches, and I switch them so much. But those two matches, especially the Firefly Funhouse, they will go down, honestly. I think those two matches just weigh in as the two greatest, only because of the simple fact that they say a show that could have been worse, but everybody, not even just the Boneyard match and the Firefly Funhouse match, just everyone from the ladder match to, even the women's match with Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley, all those characters, those men and women, they did their thing, and I commend them, honestly. That was honestly, like I said, top 3 WrestleManias of all time.
Yes, definitely. I 100% agree with that. Okay, now, so I want to ask you, what wrestler on the current rosters, male and female, are you the most hopeful about now that it's after Mania season, or basically on any promotion? It doesn't just have to be WWE, so which male and female superstars are you the most excited for?
Okay, so I'm not going to say any big names because I feel like those big names are already, they're going to get their shot at it. But I feel like the two people in my mind that I hope really get the shine is Angel Garza for the men and Bianca Belair for the women. So, and I've been seeing our posts for the last couple of years. We all love Bianca Belair for, more than just one reason, but she, out of all the Black women wrestlers that I've seen, she has the strength of a Jazz. She has the technical wrestling of Jacqueline. And honestly, she has the fire and desire, pardon the pun, of a Sasha Banks.
Yes.
So, those two especially. And then even with Garza, I feel like Garza, they always want to strap the rocket to, Rey Mysterio as being like that Spanish guy like an Eddie Guerrero, and that's not taken away from Andrade, because Andrade is great. Well, I hope he gets to have that shine as well. But Angel Garza has like that 2000-2001 Eddie Guerrero Latino heat that has been missing since Eddie passed. And I feel like he can do some amazing things.
You know what's so funny? My boyfriend said the same thing about Angel. And you're the third person I've heard actually mention that. And it's just, Angel makes me excited, not just because, not just because I'm a woman, but because of the fact, because he is, I actually met him, he's actually a really nice person. But it's just like, he really does have the charisma of an Eddie Guerrero and stuff. And I really like his athleticism and everything, and the ooze that he has. And I can't say enough about Bianca Belair that I've already said.
My gosh,
like,
she is amazing.
I love her so much. Like, I don't even just love how athletic she is and just how charismatic she is. I just love how how she's just not afraid of being proud of her heritage. And that's something that just speaks to me on a very deep level. You know, like when she came out in that last takeover, dressed in that
Oh
Black
my
History of the
God.
Making outfit. Oh, I
I want
almost
to.
died.
I
I was
want to
like,
say
oh
this
my
real quick for not only to you but to anybody else that listens. To be honest, I want Bianca to win that so bad just because of that outfit. That outfit spoke to me in so many ways. I was like, yes, I don't know how they allowed her to wear this because I know politics in WWE is, but that outfit just spoke so many volumes of just the culture in WWE now, and it's so refreshing. But yeah.
It is. It really is. And then it's just when you think about, where they once were in terms of, how they portray black wrestlers, and then you got now with Kofi being an actual African born, champion, and then you got Bianca, you got Naomi and all that. Like the representation is full. Like it's just so beautiful to see. And and I oh my gosh, I could gush about that all day. But I also have to ask you about and now we're gonna turn off a little bit into the dark side. Um how did you feel about all the releases that
Oh man, I've been waiting all week for this interview, only for this right here. Okay, so I'm gonna try to keep this as short as I can because I don't want to go on rant. But I understand. I'm half and half. I understand why they did it because it's around the time that they started doing cuts, and some of those wrestlers that was on there, like, let me just say this before I even go into it. So I love each and every single person that decides to be a wrestler and really puts that passion into something that I love. However, on the flip side, I feel like when WWE starts signing every single person that they can, they sign them, but they don't do anything with them. So their talent, whenever they first come, like No Way Jose, is fresh, is fun, is new, especially for an NXT crowd. That's great. However, when you get to the main roster, you have to really have that roster, not necessarily limited, but you gotta have those pillars of a lower card that can, spark up like the mid card. You gotta have a mid card that sparks up and make you say, "Oh my God, when is he gonna get to the top of the realm?" And then once they are at the top, those guys you gotta have on a limited playing field to where okay, everyone is in the rows. So seeing people like No Way Jose be released, that made me say, okay, I can understand it. However, when you do that to people like Leo Rush, who came back from adversity last year and really put his stamp on the Cruiserweight division. You take Drake Maverick, who is in the Cruiserweight tournament currently, you take him and release him. And that heartfelt video that he put out, I was at work watching it, and it almost brought me to tears because you see the passion for everyone that does this thing called wrestle, and their lives are just shaking. Not only just those guys, but the backstage hands. Billy Kidman, Finley, like Mike Chioda, who's been signed to the WWE since 1989. Like, you do all that for money, but then you have things like, oh, you'll pay Bill Goldberg, $900,000 for a match or for a year, however much he makes within that time or whatever the guidelines on there is. You telling me you will rather pay $900,000 for a guy who is only going to do 1 to 2 moves in a match versus, guys like Leo Rush, Heath Slater, Zack Ryder, the OC. You just signed the OC to a big contract in 2015, 2016, and now you have them basically about to go back. You seen what Machine Gun Carl Anderson put on his Twitter. You just gave New Japan Pro Wrestling back their spark. Bullet Club is not dead. New Japan definitely is not dead. They will not go down while fight. And if you wanted AEW and New Japan, Ring of Honor, Impact, MLW, NWA, if you wanted those companies to really have something to strive for whenever this COVID thing goes away, it's going to be interesting when we can get the crowd back, because it will be a week or a month of debuts.
Right. Now, I know the way that I felt about it was just kind of like, it made me sad because you had people like who they were afraid to really pull the
Oh
trigger
my
on,
God,
like
yes.
Rusev get released. Like I felt like that was definitely surprising. And then you had people who had not yet, reached their potential, like MJ Jenkins in NXT, who sadly enough lost her brother to the
Oh wow.
disease. And then now she's lost her job to it. And then you have people like Deonna Purrazzo in NXT who's also lost her job too. Like I felt really sad for the people who have yet to reach their fullest potential. But then I felt sad collectively for all of these people who built their lives with this company, like you mentioned, like Fit Finlay and Mike Chioda, and and all those people who spent so many years with the company only to have it like snatched away. And I will be actually paying tribute to them later on in the show. Um, so um, so also I want to ask you how you felt about Howard Finkel, who did also pass away this
It's
week as
funny. It's
well.
funny that we're talking about Finkel because I just got done watching a video of the top 20 biggest pops. I can't think of I think his name is Apex Predator. He does them all the time. But one of the videos they included was when he announced CM Punk for his match at I want to say it was Survivor Series of 2011 or 12.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was 2011.
Yeah, he just that Pop Diddy got the realization of him being so like teary eyed and seeing, oh my God, like the crowd is still, behind me after so long of being with the company. Like he is the voice. There's so many voices of wrestling, but if you have to have a Mount Rushmore of the faces of WWE, not only WWE but wrestling, he is up there. So yeah, it's sad week for the wrestling world because you have the double whammy of that and the releases. Yeah, it's tough right now.
Yes, it is tough, but ultimately, when it comes to anything like this, because even while watching SmackDown last night, you could still tell that they were still going forward. And I also feel a little bit sorry for the wrestlers who are still having to perform even with all this on their minds, because they watched friends, and colleagues get let go, and they probably built relationships with these people, and they probably definitely had relationships with Howard Finkel, because even Big E had Fink on his armband when he was wrestling in the tag team match last night. But it's just, I feel really sorry for them, still having to push past all that and still, perform. But at the same point in rate, when it comes to, Howard Finkel, the way that I choose to think about it whenever people like that, in wrestling pass on, I just like to think of them, in heaven, with their other wrestling friends, having wrestling shows and smiling and all of that, up in heaven. So they just got a really fire announcer now.
Yeah.
So that's just how I have to, think of it in a sense, because, if you think too heavily on it and too negative about it, you'll just cry. And it's just, so that's just how I feel about him. And I hold him in very high regard because I love his voice. And in terms of all the releases, I just hope the best for them, because some of them were also furloughed, so some of them might also come back, once all this is over. But I just hope the best for everyone.
Let me ask you this: do you think that a lot of the people that were released, say like Rusev and the OC, you think about those who may have got furloughed, do you think that they would either take the chance of wanting to be furloughed, or do you think they would just going to get the release and have the realization of, okay, I have an opportunity to be able to get out of this company and be able to find greener pastures, outside of WWE? Do you think they would go that route, or do you think they would just stay with the furloughs?
I don't know. I feel like that's more of an individual basis. They would have to make that choice for themselves. But when you look at someone in a situation like Rusev, he was barely being used. Because I don't even think he had a match at WrestleMania this time. And when you have someone like the OC, now the OC, I'm not sure if they were either full on released or furloughed or what, but I believe according to AJ Styles, he said that they have been full on released. But in the sense of the OC, they might find it, better to leave and go somewhere else, because they were kind of back and forth. It was like 1 minute they would push them heavily, to where they would win that trophy that they won at Super Showdown.
Which is crazy.
You would never see them again.
That's the craziness of it. Like, they just won, not even just last year. Like, in the span of 6 months, they just won a tournament at Super Showdown as the greatest tag team. And then they're inserted with the Boneyard match. And now they're gone. That's...
Right, like they had magic powers out of nowhere in that match, because I'm looking like, how did they conjure these
I was
druids?
confused.
Like, but I was so confused, but I just went with it. But I was just like, how I didn't know the OC had powers, but okay. But it was confusing for them, because it was almost like a double-edged sword with the OC. It was like 1 minute they would get pushed, and the next minute you wouldn't see them anymore, but then you'd see them again in a random match. Like, I feel like they would do better if they went to New Japan or anywhere else, or even AEW or something like that. But then with Rusev, I'm not sure if he was full on release or furloughed or whatever. But I feel like I'm half and half with him. I feel like he has the familiarity with WWE to where if they wanted to full on push him, they could. But if they're not going to do it,
especially with your wife still being there too, though, that's the craziest thing. Your wife is still in the company.
Right, that's awkward. Like, that's awkward. But then at the same time, they almost did the same thing with CM Punk and AJ Lee, because CM Punk left, and AJ Lee was still there for a minute until he decided to retire. Well. So, right, him too, him and Renee. Like, it's strange. It's really strange. But I'm pretty sure they work it out how they're going to work it out, because, I mean,
right,
when you love someone, you'll find a way. So, but I'm just going to wrap this up by thanking you, first of all, for coming on my show, because this is a brand new thing. Like, I'm just getting to the point where I'm finding the courage to share my own voice about something that I'm passionate about in a new way. So I just thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on my little show. If you have any like social media handles or anything like that where you want people to follow you or something like that, then you
all right,
can
cool.
Say that.
Hey guys, thank you for listening. I appreciate y'all allowing me to be able to be on here with Stephanie to talk about this little thing that we love called wrestling. If you want to follow me on Twitter, my Twitter handle is supersplashbro_. If you want to find me on Facebook, you can find me at Ramsey Williams. Besides that, I'm just a working boy that really don't have anything else to do besides work and watch wrestling. But if you want to find me on PlayStation, you got me at DeMarcus_Wade. And hopefully me and Stephanie will be able to do some collaboration once I start on my project, once it does come out.
All right. Thank you, Ramsey. All right. Okay, so this is a special main event segment. In light of everything that's happened this week in wrestling, normally I would have taken this time to talk about everything that happened on all three shows between Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, and maybe a little bit of AEW. But today, I'm going to actually use this time to pay tribute to Howard Finkel and also all of the WWE superstars and backstage hands who were released this week. It's been very difficult, but I'm just going to pay tribute to all of those people and talk about moments in which they've entertained me or made me laugh, or, anything of note that they may have done in the wrestling business. So I'm going to start with Howard Finkel. He passed away, I believe Thursday, at the age of 69. He had been dealing with different health issues because after he had a stroke, he had just been dealing with health issues, and he wasn't as active on the wrestling circuit in terms of doing shows or anything else like that. He was basically fully retired, but he was but he was widely regarded as the greatest ring announcer WWE has ever had. And he has had a really long history with the WWE. So he was the first employee the WWE had ever hired, and he was the longest lasting employee WWE had up until his death. He was born on June 7th, 1950 in Newark, New Jersey. He began working for Vince McMahon Sr. in 1975 for the WWF at the time. There's a lot of W's in there. And he debuted as a ring announcer at Madison Square Garden in 1977. So literally 2 years after he started working with the company, he became a ring announcer at the Mecca of wrestling. Now, his distinctive voice was sometimes used for the intros to different shows, and even more recently, his voice was used as the intro to the Sam Roberts Wrestling Podcast. You know, for those who seek to listen to him, if you want, he is a WWE personality more so on pre-shows than anything else. But before that, he has his own wrestling podcast, so he did the intro for that. His signature call would be the emphasis that he would place on certain words. Famously, the word new, as a new champion would celebrate their win. He would announce them, and the new WWE champion or whatnot. And he is also credited with coming up with the event name of WrestleMania, because the original idea for the title of WrestleMania was supposed to be the Colossal Tussle. So praise God that that Howard Finkel intervened with that. And he also wasn't above participating in storylines either, because I remember towards the early 2000s, he had an ongoing feud with fellow ring announcer Lillian Garcia. And she was probably one of the first female ring announcers the WWE had ever had. And she's a singer as well, very talented. And she has her own podcast as well. And they had a feud going on over who would take the top spot as lead ring announcer. But in real life, she even mentioned on Instagram that he was very helpful towards her. And a lot of people shared various stories of how Howard Finkel basically helped them through travel and helped them, you know, sort of find their way. Even on SmackDown this past Friday, Michael Cole mentioned how when he first started in WWE about over 20 years ago, how Howard Finkel basically led him, you know, all around headquarters and basically taught him everything about the company and all that he would need to know. And now when you see people like Michael Cole, who's, you know, a commentator, but, you know, different from a ring announcer, but a commentator now, and how long he stayed, and just the amount of people who Howard Finkel has sewn into, it's just, all of those stories were just really touching to hear. And when you see people like, sadly enough, Mike Rome, who was also an announcer for WWE until he got released this week or furloughed this week, and you have people like Lillian Garcia, people like Greg Hamilton, and people like Michael Buffer, and even his brother, who does the announcing in UFC. All of these people would not have been able to do what they do best if it were not for the contributions of Howard Finkel. And I am grateful for everything that he's ever done for any wrestler that's chosen to work for the company. And I wish his spirit a sweet and wonderful rest, and may he rest with the angels, and may he announce all the great matches going on in heaven right now, and rest on with the Almighty. Thank you, Howard Finkel. Okay, so in light of everything that's happened this week with the releases of different WWE talent, I'm going to pay tribute to them in hopefully a way that does all of these people justice. And if not, I deeply apologize. And I just want to say that even with this crisis going on, losing a job or losing a career that you've worked your entire life for is not an ideal situation because you're wondering how it's like you feel like your back is against the wall. You don't know how you're going to provide for your family, how you're going to provide for yourself. It almost throws you backwards and makes you feel like, well, this is who I am, and if I can't do do something, that fits into who I am as a person, then what am I doing with my life, and what is my actual purpose is. It's an attack of conscience, it's an attack of purpose, and it's an attack on your spirit, and it can be demoralizing. But what I seek to do in all things, or at least what I try to do in all things, is to highlight the positives and to talk about, what I'm going to do is talk about how all of these people have impacted my life as a wrestling fan, and wish them nothing but the absolute best going forward in their futures. So, we're going to start with Rusev. Rusev being let go was a huge letdown for me because it was just kind of like, bro, like, he was a guy who had all of the tools to be a star, but was never truly pushed to that potential. But basically, I'm going to say he started in 2010 with WWE and began training at Florida Championship Wrestling. And he wrestled at NXT until 2014, until he made his debut on the main roster in the Royal Rumble match. And he had been over with the crowd on multiple occasions, including with his run with Rusev Day with his wife Lana and Aiden English, who was also released and or furloughed. He was frustrated with the company for a long period of time, but at the same time, it's just, even with the frustration, it's just hard to watch him go because he had so much potential to take his career to the next level, but he was never given that ball to run with. And I wish him absolutely nothing but the best. Then Kurt Angle was let go as well. Now, mind you, he hadn't been doing a whole lot as of late because he's technically retired. And he wrestled his last match at last year's WrestleMania against Baron Corbin, in which he lost, which I felt like was a bad move, but we're not going to discuss that either. So Kurt Angle was in a backstage role as a producer after his retirement match, and he was under contract when he was released, and he was definitely a top star during his time with WWE and also TNA. And he's considered one of the greatest in-ring competitors of all time because he started off as an Olympic wrestler, and he won a gold medal in the 1993 Atlanta Olympics with a broken freaking neck and didn't mind telling you about it. And he was just always positive, and even when he wasn't positive, he went to reinvent himself so he could come back and wrestle to the best of his ability until he couldn't anymore. And I remember the last huge amount of joy I felt watching him wrestling was in the tag team match he participated in with Ronda Rousey 2 years ago against Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, and that was really cool, and I wish him nothing but the best. Then we also have Zack Ryder, who progressed through WWE's developmental system with Kurt Hawkins, who was also released and or furloughed. And he debuted with him in 2007. And he became a singles wrestler on the ECW brand in 2009. And he got over with his internet show, Z True Long Island Story. And it was so crazy because when he got over, it was right around the time social media was beginning to sort of flourish in the idea that you can use it outside of television in order to get your point across or brand yourself. And WWE basically failed on, capitalizing off of that popularity. But he also went on to win an Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania 32. And he looks forward to the future in all things. And he also has his fiancée, Chelsea Green, is also a promising NXT superstar as well. Then we have Eric Rowan, which was surprisingly because he was getting pushed a little bit as of late. He earned a singles victory over Roman Reigns at Clash of Champions last September, and he debuted with the Wyatt family alongside Luke Harper, who's no longer with the company as well, and Bray Wyatt in 2012 at NXT. And he won the NXT Tag Team Championships with Luke Harper one time and arrived on the main roster with the group in 2013. And he also teamed with him and the Bludgeon Brothers when they were repackaged, and they won the SmackDown Tag Team Championships twice. And he also took part in the shortest WrestleMania match in history against The Rock at WrestleMania 32, and he lost in just 6 seconds. And not to mention, he's had this run as this scary person who was carrying around a spider, as they revealed, in a cage, but then it got crushed by Drew McIntyre. And this was before all of this happened, all of the crisis happened. So, and then another surprising move, they let go of Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson, and they basically had a long history in New Japan Pro Wrestling as original members of the Bullet Club. And in WWE, he teamed with Luke Gallows as the Good Brothers, and they won the Raw Tag Team Championships twice, as well as, more recently, the Tag Team World Cup at Super Showdown. And he had been a member of the OC with Gallows and AJ Styles since 2019, which was basically kind of like a repackaged Bullet Club, except it wasn't. And they both experienced stop-start pushes, where it's like 1 minute they would get pushed and the next minute that you wouldn't see them on TV anymore during their run as a tag team. And then they were also treated as henchmen along with AJ Styles. More recently, they even, which is why another reason why their release came as a surprise, was because of the fact that they participated with AJ Styles in the highly acclaimed Boneyard match that AJ Styles participated in with The Undertaker. But they are probably seeking to go back to the greener pastures of New Japan Pro Wrestling. And, you know, they're going, and what's so weird about it is they also signed new 5-year deals last summer. And then Luke Gallows has a longer history with the company, and he came up through developmental territory, Deep South Wrestling, in the mid-2000s, and he had multiple gimmicks during his first run with the company, including Imposter Kane and Festus. And he was also, I believe, a member of the Straight Edge Society with CM Punk and Serena Deeb, who was also released. So I wish them the best in their career. And then Sarah Logan lost a one-sided match to Shayna Baszler this past Monday night on Raw. And she signed with WWE in 2016 and was sent to NXT. And she competed in the first ever Mae Young Classic, and she lost to Mia Yim in the first round. And she was called up with Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott in November 2017 as the Riot Squad, but they weren't taken as seriously as a threat, and they were disbanded with the 2019 Superstars shakeup. And she would fight mostly on WWE main event, and she appeared in multi-woman matches when they need someone to fill out the numbers, but she wasn't treated as seriously as a character or as seriously as a wrestler. So we wish her the best. And EC3 was released as well. He returned to NXT at NXT TakeOver Philadelphia in 2018. And during his first run in the WWE, he was known as Derek Bateman. And he had a great feud with the Velveteen Dream in NXT and competed for the NXT North American Championship before making his debut in 2019, where he won the 24/7 championship on 4 occasions. But he was pushed to the wayside and he wasn't viewed on television because he failed to get cheered during a match with Dean Ambrose, who is now Jon Moxley in AEW. And basically now on Twitter, now that he's been released, he basically made a quote saying, "I will not copy and paste a motivational quote. I will not make proclamations about a future that is uncertain, not only for an industry, but a planet as a whole. And I am not a victim. I am not the first, and I will not be the last." And then in another surprising move, Drake Maverick, who debuted in 2018 as the general manager of 205 Live and initiated a tournament for the Cruiserweight Championship upon his debut with the brand, was released. And to me, it felt like he gave a more serious he gave a serious kick in the butt to the 205 Live brand because they were trying to recover from Enzo Amore being cruiserweight champion, but then him getting caught up in all his issues and getting released from the company. And he basically was basically the general manager of this brand, and it felt like he was sort of giving it a more serious edge. But then he also managed the Authors of Pain when their manager Paul Ellering left to a Raw Tag Team Championship reign, and he was a constant figure in the 24/7 championship scene, and he was running with the gimmick that he needed the title to consummate his marriage. But it was so hilarious because it was just like his wife Renee, who's in real life, was getting so frustrated with him not being so, caught up with this championship that he couldn't even focus on her. So it was just a lot. And then when he got released, he posted a video that I recommend that you do watch, but not to watch someone cry or be upset, but just, to just watch how, his passion ran deep for the company and for wrestling as a whole. And what's so weird about his release is the fact that they're still letting him compete in the tournament to crown the new NXT Cruiserweight champion. And that's just really awkward. But moving right along to Kurt Hawkins, he first debuted on the main roster with Zack Ryder, who was mentioned before, and they both joined La Familia with Edge in 2007, and they were basically known as the Edgeheads because he basically used them as stunt doubles in his matches. And after his partnership with Zack Ryder ended, he had failed tag teams with Vance Archer and Tyler Rex before he was released in 2014. But then he came back to the company in 2016 after the second brand split, where he was mostly a jobber. And then he reunited with Zack Ryder last year and teamed with him until their departure. And then they scored an unlikely tag team title reign at last year's WrestleMania. And he's ready to rise from the ashes. And he stated on Twitter, "Last time I got fired, I had a really funny tweet in response to it. Doesn't feel appropriate today. I will say this, a lot of very talented people lost their jobs today. And out of this disaster, the pro wrestling community will rise stronger than ever." And I would also like to mention that some of these people are, bouncing back by selling merchandise on ProWrestlingTees.com. So I would definitely recommend that you go on there and buy some of their stuff. And Mike and Maria Kanellis, but they were formerly known as Michael Bennett, signed with the WWE in 2017, and they debuted at Money in the Bank. Now, Maria had worked for WWE previously, debuting with the company as part of the Diva Search contest. Remember that word? She placed 5th in the contest, but was signed to a developmental contract anyway, as the company saw her potential. And she was wrestling on Raw in 2005 and was released from the company for the first time in 2010. Now, Mike Bennett never gained traction on Raw or SmackDown after debuting, although he started to build momentum wrestling on 205 Live and engaging in a feud with Drake Maverick. And he was also outspoken on social media about his struggles with substance abuse, and he had kicked the habits, his negative habits, and him and Maria have also recently added 2 children to their family as well. So they're basically, moving on and trying to bounce back from that. And Heath Slater, my God, he was eliminated too. And it's sad because he never truly reached his some potential, but not full on potential. And I know online a lot of people was really hoping that he would be a part of the 3MB blessing thing, where Drew McIntyre and Jinder Mahal basically got fired and then worked out and basically got better and became world champions. And everybody thought for sure Heath Slater would be the next one to become world champion at some point. But sadly enough, now he's gone. He started as a member of the original Nexus group with Wade Barrett and David Otunga and those guys. He spent most of his time as a member of a stable or a tag team. He was either with the Core, 3MB, like I mentioned earlier, Slater Gator, most notably the Nexus. He recalled one time in 2017 where he thought they were going to get fired when they were called into Vince McMahon's office ahead of their infamous debut. And then once they made that debut where they destroyed everything and beat up John Cena and everybody on set, it was just really crazy. And he's also won the WWE Tag Team Championships with Justin Gabriel 3 times. And he was the inaugural SmackDown Tag Team Champion with Rhino, who is also no longer with the company. Then you had people like No Way Jose, who was brought up to the main roster from NXT in 2016. And he really didn't achieve that much. He was just enhancement talent. And he would only chase the 24/7 title, and all he would do was just dance around with his conga line. But he wasn't allowed to really reach his full-on potential outside of just dancing. And I'm sad for him because, he could have done a whole lot more, but, there was that. And then you have Eric Young, who had a 12-year career with Impact Wrestling, and he came to NXT with the stable Sanity in 2016. And he won the NXT Tag Team Championships with Alexander Wolf and held the titles for 123 days. But Sanity, which was separated from Nikki Cross at the time, who was still with the company, was called up to SmackDown in the Superstar shakeup, and the group never gained traction on the main roster and were quietly disbanded. And he did some backstage work as a producer, but now that's over. And then another heartbreaking let go was Lio Rush, who signed to WWE in 2017 to perform for NXT in 205 Live brand. And he was brought up to the main roster in 2018 to be the mouthpiece for Bobby Lashley. Y'all remember how he used to come out with Bobby Lashley, be like, Lashley, Lashley, Lashley. And the duo were split up, and he returned to NXT at the back end of 2019, where he won the NXT Cruiserweight Championship, and he held that title for 63 days. And he wound up losing it to Angel Garza. But what's so weird is it's just he had risen from all of his mental health issues and everything to get better, only to have been let go. And Primo and Epico, who were part of the legendary Cologne family, they were let go, and they were barely on television as it is. So it's just kind of like, gosh, like what in the world? And then you have people like Deonna Purrazzo and MJ Jenkins, who had barely begun to reach their fullest potential in NXT, get let go from the company as well. And it's just so sad because MJ Jenkins lost her brother-in-law to the virus and the crisis, and now she's lost her job to it too, and that's just really sad. And then you have producers who are furloughed, like Fit Finley, and Shane Helms and Billy Kidman and Mike Rotunda, and Sean Davari, who work backstage as either as referees or producers, who once upon a time had flourishing careers, as wrestlers. Like Shane Helms was the Hurricane, for God's sake. And and he was like one of my favorites back in the day. And Fit Finley, who used to train the women, like seriously, like he had been with the company as a backstage hand since 2012, and his career in WWE has spanned from 1974 to 2012. And you also have people like Aiden English, who was who started off as a wrestler in the tag team with Simon Gotch called the Vaudevillains, and as a member of Rusev Day, and then he was announcing at 205 Live, and now he's gone. And then you have creative writers who, like Andrea Listenberger, who worked on the Otis and Mandy Rose storyline, and she was glad that it resonated with so many people. And then you also have other on-air talent who were furloughed, like Josiah Williams, who's the rapper Wrestle and Flow, and how he posted WWE theme remixes on YouTube and on Facebook, and he makes Christian rap music. So if you're into that, please look him up. He's fantastic. And it was just like he was an on-air social media host, and he accompanied Adam Cole during his entrance at NXT TakeOver 25. And it's just a sad situation all around. But the one thing I would like to leave this segment with is the fact that all these people in some small way contributed, or in a big way contributed, to the company. And I wish them absolutely nothing but the best. And hopefully when we get past this crisis, everybody can find their footing and find their way. And that is my hope and my sincere prayer. We at the Hardy Wrestling Podcast wishes those people nothing but the absolute best for their lives. Okay, so thank you for listening to this special 10th episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. I also want to send a special shout out and a special thanks to Ramsey Williams for coming on my show and chopping it up with me and having a good time. And hopefully I can have more guests in the future, more wrestling fans, and hopefully in the future probably more wrestlers. So I'm just so grateful to have reached 10 episodes at this point. Even though this has been a really crazy week in terms of wrestling and all of that, and I know you probably look forward to it being a specific format, but I just couldn't not say anything about all the stuff that's been going on. So I thank you for listening to me all this time. If you listen to every episode, thank you. If you're just listening to a couple, thank you. If you've only listened to this one, thank you. I just hope that I can continue to offer a good listening experience for you. So like I do at the end of every show, you can follow me on social media on Instagram at Queen Steph Hardy. And you can follow the podcast page at Hardy Wrestling Podcast. If you got any questions, you can comment on some of those pictures or whatever. You can also follow me on Facebook at Stephanie LaShawn Hardy. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Queen Steph Hardy. If there's any manner of ways that you feel like I could, reach out better on social media, please don't, hesitate to tell me. Or if you have any questions about anything that's going on in wrestling, don't hesitate to ask me either. So until next time, I hope you're staying safe in the midst of this crazy time that we're in. I hope you're cherishing the moments and the memories that you have with the people that are close to you in this time. And I just hope that even if you're being productive, or even if you're not being productive, it's a miracle that you are just still here. So just be here and be your best self. And until next time, I'll catch you later. Bye.